Hello, in this video we're going to be talking about strings and chars or characters, the text data types in C#. If you've been following along with the other chapter 2 videos, we've been using a running example of the ice cream shop. This video actually doesn't refer to the ice cream shop example. I'm going to use a different example in this video, and then in the final video for chapter 2, I will jump back and finish that ice cream shop example. But in this particular video, I'm actually going to create a new file. So if you're in Notepad or Notepad++ or even Visual Studio, open up a new file. And I am going to name this file strings because it's just going to be an example of how to use and manipulate, string and character data types. Okay, just as in every C# program code, we have our static void main method. And we've got that ready to go. I'm going to save it. As strings.cs. All right. So the string data type, we've already used some strings in some of our examples so far. From one of our very first examples, our first program that we created, the Hello World program, we used a literal string, which is a string where you put explicitly what text you want inside of quotation marks. And we can also create string variables, just like we created numerical or Boolean variables. And the values that string variables hold are text values. All right, there is a method called string.format, which allows you to use placeholders in text. And this is the very same concept as using placeholders in the WriteLine method, but it's a different method. Now, the reason I wanted to bring this up is starting in the next chapter, chapter 3, when we start using Visual Studio, and we're not using the developer command prompt to run our programs anymore, we're not going to be using the WriteLine method so much anymore, but we are still going to be working with strings. So I wanted to point out that the string.format method allows you to format strings in a way where you can incorporate placeholders the same way that we incorporated placeholders in the WriteLine method. So you put placeholding numbers inside of curly braces, and then those are replaced with the variables in the list using commas, a comma-separated list, following the little literal string inside of the parentheses that correspond to the string.format method. So here is an example. If we declare a string called str2 of data type string, we're going to assign it the value of string.format, and then we have this literal string that has placeholders in it. Okay, so let me show you an example in my own code. So let's say that we have a string variable called city. And the value that we want to assign to this variable, at least for now, is Fullerton. Okay. So we put a literal string and we've assigned that as the value of the string variable called city. Right? You have to put the double quotation marks here. Otherwise it will, C# will say, we'll look for some keyword, and there's no keyword in C# that's called Fullerton. So this is a string, a literal string that we're assigning to the variable, the string variable that we're calling city. Okay, now if we want to create another string and we're going to call it, let's just call it str1, string 1. And we want this string to be a sentence where we tell someone the city where they live. Okay. So you live in, but we don't want to type a literal string because some people might live in Fullerton, some people might live in another city. So instead of just having a literal string, we are going to use the string.format method, capital S in this string, dot format. Okay, so this is a built-in method called format that is from the class string, which C# should recognize. Okay, so the string.format method, just like any other method, it has parentheses after the name of the method. And inside of those parentheses, we're going to put you live in, and then we're going to use a placeholder. Okay, so again, this is just like when we use placeholders inside of the parentheses for the write-line method, but we're using a different method here, which is the string.format method, so that we can, instead of writing this to the console, we are saving this string along with its placeholders and all that into a new string variable called str1. Okay. So this placeholder 0 is going to be replaced with the city string variable. All right. So now the value of the variable str1 is the literal string you live in Fullerton, because at the time that str1 was assigned a value, city was Fullerton, so this became you live in Fullerton. So now if we write this out to the console, str1. So we want to take the string variable called str1 and we want to write that out to the console. If you need to catch up, do so. I'm going to save and test my code. CSC, C# compile, strings.cs. I have an error. Okay. So the error I got is the name string does not exist in the current context. Okay. So here's what I thought might happen. I wasn't 100% sure, but when I compiled my code, I saw this error, string does not exist. So what that means is, okay, I have an error on line 7, character 17. So in my code, find line 7, in Notepad++, it numbers the lines for you. If you're in regular Notepad, you'll have to count the lines 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, it doesn't recognize string with a capital S. Now the reason that is because string, just like the write-line method, is part of the system namespace. Okay? So if I'm going to call a method from the string class, I have to, at the top of my code, specify that I'm using the system namespace. So in this course, we're going to learn a lot of methods that are actually found in the system namespace. So it's probably a good idea just by habit, any new program code that you're creating from this point on, just to by default put using system at the top of your code. You'll see in the next chapter when we start using Visual Studio, I'm pretty sure by default, when you create a new project, it by default just includes that using system in your code. All right, let's save and try that again, see if we can compile it without an error this time. All right, it worked that time. Okay, so we just had to add that using system namespace at the top of our code. Now let's run our strings application. And it has output the string, you live in Fullerton. Okay, if you download the slides, I won't talk you through this example that you see on this slide, but if you download the slides that accompany this video, you can work through this example, which is also in the textbook. Okay, something important, hint, hint, you're going to need to know this for the midterm test, is the length property. So the length property tells you how many characters are in a string. So the way that you use it is you type the variable name, the string variable that you've created, and then you put dot length. So let me show you an example. All right, here in our strings code, just down at the bottom, I'm going to create an integer variable. Okay? The length property of a string returns an integer variable. So I'm going to call this variable len for length. Okay, so I've got an integer variable called length, and the value I'm going to assign to that integer variable is city dot length with a capital L. That is incorrect. I just now noticed that is incorrect in my slides. This needs to be a capital L. So what we're doing here is we're saying to C#, okay, find this variable city, which we've defined and assigned a value up here. Okay, so the value that that variable is currently holding is the string Fullerton. And then we're saying, from that variable, tell us the length in characters of that string. So this should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so this is 9. And so we're assigning that number 9 to this integer variable called length. I'm going to end that with a semicolon. Now let's see if that worked. So we're going to do, actually I'm going to add using static system.console, so we don't have to keep writing system.console every time that I want to use the write line method. So I'm going to use the write line method and say that has, and then use a placeholder. And this is a new statement, so we start at 0 again. Okay, don't get confused and think that just because we used a placeholder 0 up here, that down here you would go on to the next number 1. No, every time you call the method, you start from 0 again. That has blank characters. Okay? And we're going to replace that placeholder 0 with the variable len. Okay, so here we've initialized this integer variable to have a value of 9 because the city variable has a value of Fullerton and the length of that is 9. So here, the integer variable len is holding a value of 9. So when we write this out, this should say that has 9 characters. I mentioned this in a previous video. I always almost forget to do my closing quotation mark in my literal strings. Okay. So I'm going to save, catch up if you need to, and pause the video. And don't forget to save before you jump over and try to compile and test your code. Okay, no errors for me. And let's run the file. You live in Fullerton? That has 9 characters. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to add some comments just so that if you're not following along on your own computer, you should be, but if you're not, you can download this code later. Just add a few comments here. String.format can use placeholders just like WriteLine. Okay, so when we use the string.format method, it returns a string. Okay, we're going to talk a lot more about methods in chapter 7, but every time you run a method, it returns something to you. So the string.format method returns a string. So the result of running this method can be saved as a string. Okay. The writeLine method does not return a specific data type. It's actually a void method, just like our main method is a void method. It doesn't return a string. It's not like you can assign this as a string or something like that. No, it's just a method on its own that completes a function by itself. So some methods just complete functions that makes the computer do something. Other methods return a specific type of value. So this method returns a string, and then you need to save it as a string variable that you've created. Okay. All right, save that code and go on with our slides. Okay, so you can compare strings. I'm not going to take time in this video to do this. I won't use this in any of my homeworks or tests. It is a good thing to know, so that's why I'm mentioning it. So if you want to use this, maybe in your project or something after this class, you want to compare something alphabetically, like sort strings alphabetically, you can use the equals or compare to method, and the textbook gives some great examples like this one, yeah, it gives a good description in the textbook. Okay, another thing we can do with strings is find substrings within the strings. So what the substring method does, and hint, hint, might need this for the midterm exam as well. So pay attention. The substring method extracts a portion of a string from a starting point and for a specific length. Okay, the substring method takes two inputs inside of its parentheses. The first number is the starting position, and the second number is how many characters you want to return. Okay, so in this example, we have a string. The name of the variable string is word. Excuse me, the name of this string variable is word. The value that this variable is currently holding is the word water. Okay, water has 5 characters numbered from 0 up to 4. Right, W is character 0, A is character 1, T is character 2, E is character 3, and R is character 4. Okay, so the substring method, which is used by typing the name of the string variable dot substring with a capital S inside the parentheses, the first number you put is the number where you want to start. So this line is basically saying, I want to start at character number 0, or in other words, at the beginning of the word, and I want to return one letter. Okay? So the result is the letter W, because you've started at position 0 and you've done one letter. Okay? If you start at position 1 and take 2 characters, then you'll be starting at the A, taking 2 characters, A and T. Your result is AT. Okay? And just like I've said before, anywhere in C# that you can use a number, you can also use a variable. So here, if you start at position 0, and how many letters you want to take out is word.length. So word.length in this case is 5. Then your result would be the entire word. Okay. Now, on this last example, if you start at position 3, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, the letter E, and tell it to take 4 letters, you're going to get an error because there's only 2 letters left to take, the E and the R. So let's go back to my code and let's try this out. Okay, So if we want to use a substring, we first of all want to create a string variable. I'm going to call it sub. And we're going to assign it the result of using the substring method. Okay? So we can take any string. I'm going to use my city string, type dot substring. So what this is doing is it's going to take a subset of the characters in this variable, which right now is the word Fullerton, and it's going to save that as the value of the string variable called sub. So inside of these parentheses, every single time you call the substring method, you have to have two numbers inside the parentheses. They could be literal numbers, like 0 and 3. Okay. So in this case, the sub variable should return the first 3 letters because you start at position 0 and you go 3 letters, F, U, L. Writes to the console the first, the substring. Okay, what we're doing here is taking first 3 letters of city variable. Okay, so I'm going to save, catch up if you need to, pause the video. I'm going to compile my strings code, see if I have errors. Nope, it's good, and run my strings file. You live in Fullerton that has 9 characters, and then it spits out that substring that we saved, which was the FUL. Okay. Now, if we want to do something different, let's say we want to find the last letter of a string. Okay, let's create a new substring variable. I'm going to call it sub2, or excuse me, a new string variable. Now, let's think about this for a second. If you wanted to find the last letter of a string, how would you do that? Okay, so the substring variable needs to have 2 numbers. The first number is the starting position, and the second number is how many characters. Okay, so for what would we put for our first number if we want the last letter of a string? Well, that depends on how long the string is, right? In Fullerton, if we want the last letter, we'd start at character number 8, right? Because we start from 0. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we want to return 1 character. So this should just return the letter N. And then if we change our write line method to say sub2, then it should write that N to the console when we test this. So let's pause, save, and test this. Okay, compiled correctly. Now let's run the application. Okay, so you'll see on that last line, it put the letter N, so that worked. But here's the catch. Your string's not always going to have exactly 9 characters, right? If someone lives in Brea, that only has 4 characters. So we want to make our code more efficient. So instead of putting a literal number here, we can instead put a variable, such as the length of the string. Okay, this is a number. This is an integer. Just like we had the number 8 and that was an integer, city.length is also an integer. It's just the length of the string variable that we've called city. So here we're saying to C#, we want a substring and we want to start at a certain position, but that position is not always going to be the same thing. It's a variable. It's not always going to be start at position 8 or start at position 0. In this case, when we're finding the last letter of a string, we want to start at character number however long it is, right? So if we have a string variable that is 9 characters in length, we want to start at that last character. Now, this is not going to work. And if you're paying close attention, you should understand why this is going to throw an error when I try to compile it. Oh, it didn't have a error. Let me go back and check, make sure I saved it. I thought that this would have a syntax error. Okay, well, let's see what happens when we run it. There is the error. Okay, so it wasn't a syntax error. So it compiled correctly because we didn't have a syntax error. Everything we did was syntactically correct. We followed all the rules for the C# language. But there was an error when we tried to run the application, which was the argument out of range error. It says index and length must refer to a location within the string. So if you were paying close attention, you'll know that this had an error because city.length has a value of 9 in this particular case, right? Because Fullerton has 9 characters. All right, but this number, the first of the 2 numbers inside the substring method parentheses, needs to be the position number. Okay, this string Fullerton has 9 characters, but that means that there is no character number 9. There's character 0, character 1, character 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the last character of a string is actually the length of the character minus 1. Does that make sense? If not, pause, rewind, or I will explain it in a different way. Okay, so we've got the length of the variable is 9 in this case. Okay, if the city were Brea, it would be 4. You know, doesn't matter how long or what your string is. And then we're subtracting 1. Okay, so in this case, we've got 9 minus 1, so it's 8. So we're starting at character number 8 in our substring method. So this is doing the exact same thing as when we typed literally the number 8 in this substring method, except that it doesn't matter how many characters your city has. It will always do the same thing. It will always start at the last letter of the string. Okay, you'll see here that you can include an arithmetic operator here, and it just evaluates this expression and replaces the result. Okay, so you don't have to have one specific number here. You don't have to have one specific variable here. You can put in a whole expression. Okay, and C# will evaluate that and say, okay, this means start at character position number 8. Or if our city were Brea, it would mean start at character position number 3, because Brea has a length of 4 and we're subtracting 1. Let's save that and see if it worked. Okay, it compiles correctly and it runs correctly. It gave us the last letter of the string. All right. A couple more things real quick. That's strings. Briefly, there is a char data type which holds a single character. Strings can hold as many characters as you want. A char data type holds 1 character. We won't use this a lot in this class, but it's useful to know about. Something else useful with the char data type is you can use what's called an escape sequence, which is like a special character that you don't have on your keyboard. And you do that by putting a backslash followed by a single character. So table 2.5 or the table that you see on the screen gives you some examples of some escape sequences. Okay? So if you wanted to put a new line in the middle of a string, you could just do the backslash and then an n. So for example, let's do one more example in our strings application. We're going to split a line onto two separate lines using an escape sequence. Okay. So I'm just going to do a simple write line statement. And inside of my string, I'm going to put a new line starts here. Now, if I want a new line, I can put a backslash and n, and that represents a new line. So C# looks at the backslash and it says, okay, it doesn't want literally a backslash. Whatever character is after this backslash, that represents a code. Backslash n means a new line. So if I save this, compile it, and run it, it splits up that string across two different lines. So there's a lot of different escape characters that are available to you. The backslash n is one that we're going to use several times in this class, so just keep a mental note of that. But there are other ones. So like, for example, if you wanted to include a double quotation mark in your string without C# thinking that it's the end of your literal string, you can use that. So what I mean by that is if you wanted to write, he said blah, blah, blah. Okay, you want the console to actually include these quotation marks as part of your string. If you do this, you're going to get an error because it thinks that this is one string, and then you're inputting some other keywords, and then this is another string. If you want it to actually know that that is a double quotation mark that you want included as part of your string, you can use an escape sequence. So backslash quotation mark means in this string, please literally use a quotation mark inside the string. All right, that's all for strings and characters. I'll see you in one final video for chapter 2. And that will wrap up our discussion of variables and data types.